So I wanted to begin by just saying a few words about enlightenment, because it is the center of the path and the center of the intuition that isn't cognitive, that calls us to this practice, some sense, but not of logical knowing, of the possibility of a freedom that we don't know, but know, right, rationally or in a languaged framework, but somehow knows experientially or bodily, that calls us into the practice. And I'd like to honor that. I'd like to honor that movement in our hearts that have called us into this room together. There, in the Theravadan tradition, considered 4 stages of enlightenment, and the traditional practice is the continuing collectedness of coming together, of bringing all pieces of our mind together, and in that process beginning to know clearly what the obstructions of the heart are. There are all kinds of names for that, hindrances, clouds that cloud the heart. I want to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And as those are cleared in the process of practice, the power of mindfulness becomes so strong that it notices in particular 3 aspects of life. One is that everything is changing all the time, that there isn't anything that doesn't change, except for the unconditioned. That our lives, our bodies, our minds, our hearts, our friends, the earth, the weather, everything changes. And we can intuit already how deep that is, to have a mind that is so free that there's this total open-heartedness to that expression of life, that it's changing. There's no resistance at all. And in that deep connection, recognition, attention to, knowing deeply, aware of, the mind releases and it jumps into, from that knowing of breath arising, passing, sensations arising, passing, thoughts arising, passing, awareness rising, passing, arising, passing, arising, passing. There's like nothing to hold on to. And the mind jumps into the unconditioned, and that's the first stage. And coming out of the first stage, the single most important blessing of that is that there is no doubt at all about the path, and that there's no doubt that there is no such thing as a separate self. There's no doubt about that. As the practice continues, it might be that the other thing that is noticed, either impermanence or that there isn't anything that is perfect and lasting. Ian spoke about that as dukkha, right? Or as suffering. The dukkha is translated, the description for it is an axle that doesn't fit properly in the middle of the wheel. And so it just doesn't quite fit, it's like it's You know that feeling, right? When you're riding a bicycle and the chain doesn't fit. It's that kind of stress or unsatisfactoriness. It is very unsatisfactory to ride a bike where the chain doesn't fit properly, or anything like that. And when we open our hearts deeply to the reality that there isn't anything, anybody that can give us lasting satisfaction and happiness, the mind releases. There's like, how come I'm going after it? Why? It's like, it's very humbling. I'm coming on for 75, and I watch myself doing that. So anyway, lastly, for some of us, depending on our personalities, we more easily perceive one of these three gateways into enlightenment. There is the experience of anatta, that as we go deeper inside ourselves, when the mind is very calm and awareness is fully mature and illuminated, there is just no thing we can call ourselves. It is empty. It is empty of self. There's like, and that there's again nothing to grasp onto, to hold onto as this is me, this is mine. And the mind releases. So in the second stage, anger, aversion, greed, craving, delusion dwindle. They're, depending on the person, they're much less. On the third stage of enlightenment, as we continue to practice, those go. They totally go. They do not come back in the mind. And even though we love to tell stories of the Buddha talking with Mara, in the traditional teachings, and as some teachers, my teachers have talked about, on the third stage, those energies are totally burnt out. They never arise again under any circumstance. On the fourth stage, which is called arahantship, the last stage, conceit goes. Any tiny sense of comparison, of the comparing mind goes. Some teachers who are arahants, our teachers have worked with, and one you all might have heard about is Deepa Ma, and someone wrote a book about her and her teachings. And she said, there is nothing in my mind but peace, loving kindness and equanimity. That's all there is in my mind. When I consider the political work I've done and my vision of equity, of deep respect and equity, of structures that don't exclude anyone but rather include everyone, of a distribution of resources not based on skin color or religion or gender. That vision, I can't say that it's been a reality, and it was the impetus to be the first teacher to organize a queer retreat in 1992. Because that vision was so alive in me that I wanted to, well, it just wanted to manifest itself. Our visions of freedom whether they're cultural, political, structural, personal, or as communities, are incredibly important to what we bring into being and what we manifest. Enlightenment is not far away. You cannot predict when your mind will open. And as some of you talked about in the sharing circle, there are moments that build up to this jumping off. There are moments that give us a taste of a mind that is free of clinging, anger, hatred, aversion, separation, envy, jealousy, loneliness. A mind that is in communion with life. Or it could be we're listening. I remember this a lot because it was so striking to me. My father played the piano and considered a child prodigy, and his father pushed him so far and so fast and so hard that he stopped playing the piano seriously. But I grew up with piano music and Beethoven's Emperor. And I happened to go with some friends when I was living in Northampton to Tanglewood, which is this open air theatre, and there was this pianist from Russia, a new pianist with a Boston Symphony Orchestra. And he started to play, and there was a silence that was there because the playing was so incredible. We knew this wasn't just someone playing music. This one was streaming the universe into music. And all my hairs stood up. And this is when there was formal seating where all the wealthy people went, and then there was picnic seating on the ground. Every single one of us was silent. That connection, the universe flowing freely. So we've experienced moments like that give us a taste, maybe not with Beethoven, but whatever your moments are, that aren't just experiences to forget, but are gifts to care for tenderly and honor, because they are showing us the way. There is I want to just read this because it's kind of old. The translation is from the old Pali language, so bear with me, but it's because it communicates something that is so profound. So there is a practice called the cultivation of joy, a formal practice in this tradition. And one of the practices for bringing joy into the mind is recollecting the qualities of the Buddha. And it doesn't only have to be the Buddha. We could be recollecting the qualities of Deepa Ma, or someone that I knew personally, Desmond Tutu, who was quite a beautiful being, and who was very inspiring to me growing up in South Africa. This is what the recollection we're invited to. It goes, "He is accomplished. He stands utterly remote and far away from all the obstructions or hindrances or defilements of the heart. They can't come close to him. The defilements are destroyed by his path. He has rightly gone without going back to them. He has worked for the welfare and happiness of our world without deviating into internalism or an unchanging soul or spirit. Also, his speech, also the Buddha knows what is untrue and incorrect and conducive to harm and displeasing, unwelcome to others, and he does not speak that. And such speech he knows to be true, correct, but conducive to harm and displeasing and unwelcome to others, he does not speak. And such speech he knows to be true and correct, conducive to good, but displeasing and unwelcome to others, he knows the time to expound. And what he knows to be untrue, incorrect, and conducive to harm, but pleasing and welcome to others, he does not speak. I want to just read it, if I have it here. Let's see, let me go here. He has abolished all 100,000 kinds of trouble, anxiety, described as greed, hatred, delusion, as misdirected attention, as consciencelessness, as shamelessness, as anger and enmity, as contempt, as domineering, as envy, avarice, deceit, fraud and obduracy, as presumption, as pride, as haughtiness, as vanity and negligence, as craving, ignorance, as the three roots of the unprofitable, as all kinds of misconduct, defilement, stains, fictitious perceptions, applied thoughts, 5 wildernesses of the heart, the hindrances, the 108 ways of behavior of craving, that is to say, all defilements. So, to say this isn't just speaking about an exceptional being, perhaps like Muhammad or Jesus Christ, they were exceptional beings. But to contemplate the goodness, that incredible freedom from everything that is harmful, where the heart has no obstructions at all and expresses itself freely in absolutely unconditional loving kindness, and the clarity that doesn't see anything other than how things are clearly and what the path is. That is amazing. And what is incredible about it is not that I am working towards being a Buddha, but that it is lifting up for us the possibility of freedom. And that there are many beings here living in 2025. Shows my age. I was in the monasteries in that era. That showed that lived expressing some of these qualities. And if we don't in our own way, connect with that inner capacity we have, then where is our practice going? Because the vision of equity rests on those qualities. If we're harming, if we're hating, if we're holding on and identifying and owning, then that can't manifest. So then in honor of that search for truth, this is to call one of our ancestors, oh no, that's Adrian Lefwich. That's totally the wrong one that I want to read. This is from Stone Butch Blues, Leslie Feinberg. I was so afraid to come out and face the world again. I wondered why I had to choose the opening years of the Reagan administration and the rise of the moral majority to demand the right to be myself. Would they arm villages with torches and stakes and stalk me through the countryside? Would I stand alone, handcuffed in a cell, with no one to turn to if I survived the nightmare? But then I acknowledged that no matter who had been in the White House, it had always been hard to be me. Between a rock and a hard place, something told me this lifetime wasn't going to get any easier. I'd already been through a lot, and it didn't seem to me it could get much worse. Once again, I couldn't see the road ahead. I was still steering my own course through uncharted waters, relying on constellations that weren't fixed. I wished there was someone, somewhere I could ask, what should I do? But no person existed in my world. I was the only expert on living my own life, the only person I could turn to for answers. That courage and that vision really inspires me to charter our own way forward in expressing ourselves in the beauty we are, without the obstructions of colonialism or imperialism or capitalism. So that's the vision of this practice, and how they come together, the personal and the political, and they both rest in this vision. So here's the other side of this. This is our capacity. The Buddha says every human being who is born has the internal potential and capacity to realize freedom in this particular way. And that being born a human being is already a huge acknowledgement of this. He also said in his capacity to see through worlds, all human beings, all lifetimes, that there was no beginning. He couldn't find a beginning of when there wasn't ignorance. As there is this capacity to love unconditionally, so there is this capacity for what is ignorance. It is when the mind is covered and covers perception in such a way that we can't see when we're harming. It is the experience of being lonely, homeless, empty, separate, bewildered, and when I talk about empty, I don't mean empty in the good way I just spoke about, but the emptiness of isolation, of like there's nothing good inside of me. That kind of emptiness. That every human being is born with. Out of this field comes wanting to hold on, to fix, to control, to try and make sense of it. So to give a classic description of, what we've done when we've, as some of us, what do you call it? The dominant culture. What dominant culture has done when they've gone into lands, they have said, this is me and mine. They've taken what is the earth and enclosed it as my property, me. This is mine. As some way to express how can I deal with these energies? I have to solidify something in my life. That energy of grasping on, of holding and saying me and mine, we do to our bodies, our emotions, our perceptions, our thoughts, our opinions, our ideas. Actually, we do it to everything. And it isn't just one of us, it's all of us to some degree or another. That is the description of dis-ease, not fitting, and suffering. Stronger than these energies that we know because we've experienced them and lived with them is the capacity to love. The ignorance can be healed. The greed, craving, grasping, hating, aversion, disparagement, envy and jealousy, they can be healed. And Ian spoke about that. And one of the paths of healing is seeing those energies over and over again, increasingly clearly until we notice, oh my God, why am I doing this? It's hurting me. Why am I doing this? And that's one way, the noticing way with mindfulness. The other way is, oh my God, craving and clutching, let me hold you with my caring and compassion. I see you. I hold you with love. May, through my love, you feel the beginning roots of a different rootedness, not in confusion, but in caring and connection. And we talked about that as one of the expressions of enlightenment, as interbeing. And so we are expressions of these two forces. So let me backtrack. I know this is kind of a lot, and maybe for some of you it's like, oh my God, what is she talking about? But honestly, this has been the equivalent of my Bible. I carry this understanding wherever I go. I carry this understanding all the time because it's guided me so much. Why is a vision so important? Let me just backtrack. Because of a lot of the trauma I experienced, I've shared this in my youth, my ignorance got activated and activated and activated until I felt I was a being that only had hatred and anger in her. I couldn't, there were times when I just could not discern anything else. And this is what feels miraculous. And there were times when I was outside and there was a moon. This is in Johannesburg. I don't know if you know, it's 8,000 feet up. And so, no, it's 10,000 feet up. High, it's a high plateau, so you feel closer to the moon. And I would stand and I would feel touched by the night sky and the moon. Something alive in that young, deeply defended being got touched. And that's the miracle of us, is that even in our being lost in the wilderness of hatred or defendedness, that we can also still be touched. Because that is our deepest inheritance. So then we could say that this path of an illuminated mind where the defilements or the obstructions or the energies that harm, let me just say that, that's a better description. The energies that harm are far away from us. That vision of harming being far away from us is the moment-to-moment practice that we are invited to. And we purify it by being present and seeing and discerning. Or maybe we don't, but someone says, Arinna, you really hurt my feelings, the way you spoke to me. And then I'm like, oh, wow, okay, thanks. I'm so sorry, I didn't realize I was doing it. And I backtrack what was happening, right? In the present, moment to moment, we begin the healing process of disentangling, of dismembering, of dismantling again and again those energies so that they become less and less of a force in our lives. And so it's said that a simple description of this path is, don't cling to anything, don't hate anything. That is the path. Because when they're not present, the mind is freed, the heart is freed. When I first heard that, I felt outraged because it didn't reflect the reality of experiencing so much rage and hatred directed towards me from a police state in South Africa, because my parents were activists and so we were really targeted, or from the violence in my family. And that felt impossible. It felt impossible to accept a path that somehow didn't acknowledge the impact on me of all the trauma. And so I want to acknowledge the impact of the incredible tearing apart of the integrity of our being for those of us who've experienced directly violence. or abandonment. And I won't keep going on because we know there's a long list. And I needed an acknowledgement. I needed not just me, but I needed an acknowledgement of a community, by a community, to say, yes, this is what many, many of us have experienced. And because I couldn't hold it, I couldn't refrain from blaming and hating. And I blamed and hated a lot in my activism. And my activism saved me in my 20s, really. It saved me, otherwise I would have succeeded in destroying my life. So I couldn't hold it, so I acted it out. And then, slowly, with this path, I was able to grow the strength to understand that this is the gift I can give to clean up my lineage of trauma being passed from one generation to another. And this is the gift I can give to my community by saying, this is what's inside of me. And I have to find a way to work it and heal it. I want to come back to this, but now I want to go to, as a trauma survivor, as trauma survivors, it is impossible to turn towards suffering over and over again without also cultivating joy and loving kindness and laughter and having breaks and singing and dancing and all the things that actually are deeply strengthening for the mind and heart. I have found it impossible. Maybe you haven't, but I have. I've had to go back and forth and back and forth. For years, all I did was look at a photograph of myself as a baby. That's the only person I could send metta to. First it was the trees. I couldn't say metta, I could only sing metta. It's a different part of my brain, and to the trees. I spent 1 3-month retreat at Insight Meditation Society, walking up and down. I never went into the meditation hall. And I sang metta to the trees. Because as soon as I sat down, my pain was so overwhelming that I either had to leave or find another way to stay connected and to find a way, like Leslie Feinberg. I will have to find a way. And that was my way. Walking up and down, I had lost about 15 pounds, up and down and up and down and up and down the street, singing to these beautiful trees. May you be safe, may you be safe, may you be protected. And then, at the next 3-month retreat, I had a little picture of myself as a 2-year-old, and I had the picture by my bed, and I sent metta to her. And I did that for 6 weeks. That's all I did. Just one way of many ways to, and then just say one other thing, because some of you supported me in this. In my cancer process, when I was in a ton of pain, some of you came to drive me to hospital for radiation and chemo. And I would say, sing with me. That's the only way I can hold my pain. Zeta and Ellen were one of them. And they would sing. And we would sing songs. We would sing songs for an hour at a time. just singing to build the strength to hold the terrible pain. So I bow to the strength that comes from each of us finding our way into that balance of cultivating joy through whatever it is that does it. Cooking is another one, and food is another one, right? Good wine is another one. Good beer too. So cultivating joy, and one of the primary practices of cultivating joy is seeing our own goodness. In fact, there is a beautiful practice where you go to a friend or your exes or honeys and you say, "Tell me why you love me. Give me 10 reasons why you love me." And I pretty much guarantee you they won't have a hard time giving you 10 reasons why they love you. Because each of us has lots that is lovely. I myself was in a training. It was a visions training, multicultural training up in Boston, and we were, after a week together living and training, to write what we appreciated about each other, and that was like in the 90s, and I still have that list of appreciations of why people appreciated me. And it's important to really, really work, I don't want to say work hard, but to honor what our beautiful qualities are, and our generosity in particular. Whether we hold a door open for someone, or there's a line by the coats and we stay back so someone can go forward, where you let me into the dinner line for that very salty soup. So cultivating the energies that strengthen us so that over time we can open more and more to what is difficult, to the places that are clinging and holding on. And as we do, as we deepen, we discern, oh, here is where I'm holding on. So I love the beautiful things I have where I'm living in my little cabin. I have one of Ruth's hand-woven carpets. I have some of my own mosaic work that I love. I have some beautiful paintings of gifts and so on and so forth. And I realize, like, oh wow, I'm clinging. Well, in a way, big deal. It gives me a lot of pleasure, and so that's great. But I love that I saw it, because I know now from my practice that whenever I let go, I love more. Wherever I let go, I feel more at home. The process of healing what's inside of us to honor our love and our wisdom, to honor that movement towards freedom that the Buddha and Leslie Feinberg both searched for. And us too, depends on not projecting our judgment, blame and shame on other people. But I'm pulling it back to say, this is mine, and this is what I get to heal. This is what we have been given in this time. Some of us have been given it our whole lives. I've lived in a fascist country for this has always been fascist for some communities, right? But we're coming together more in communities and saying, no, I'm not going to keep thinking about Trump and what a bad person he is. I'm not going to project out any of my unworked out energies into judgment and blame, because it locks those energies into place. That is how ignorance works. It projects out, and in that projecting out covers things in a way in which you can't see how you're harming. And that's what's happening. I did that when I was growing up. I harmed a lot, and I couldn't tell I was harming. And that's the nature of that kind of projection, is that it covers up our capacity to see that we're harming. And that's what we're experiencing in these fascist regimes. People who are unable to see that they're harming. And we are invited to refrain from doing that. To pull back any negativity and to care for those energies, because otherwise we're not freeing ourselves to come together in new and different ways to model new and different communities, because that's our vision. We have to have a vision of coming together in community in different ways, and we can't do it if we're doing the same thing that they're doing. Okay. That was my rant. Apologies. Okay, so if what we're feeling is overwhelming, go to contemplating your generosity and the beautiful things in your life, the beautiful things of the Dharma, of your art, of your conditions, of the earth, of the trees, of the flowers. Rest your mind, strengthen it with what is joyful, and then come back again. And we do this dance over and over, turning towards what is difficult. When it gets too much, resting, strengthening, coming back. Be creative in sustaining your mindfulness. You can be as creative as you want. Do maths and then go back to your breath. If you like doing mathematical problems, sing a song, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, and then go back. Don't feel limited by our guidance. Feel supported to be creative in finding ways to lengthen your connection to being present, however you do it. Okay. So I'll read one of my favorite poems to end with. This is Remember by Joy Harjo. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon, know who she is. I met her in a bar once in Iowa City. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father, his hands cradling your mother's flesh, and maybe her heart, maybe not. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are, red earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth, black earth, we are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind, remember her voice. She knows the origin of the universe. I heard her singing Kiowa War dance songs in the corner of 4th and Central once. Remember, you are all people, and that all people are you. Remember that you are the universe, that this universe is you. Remember that all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember that language comes from this. Remember that dance, that language is, that life is. Remember to remember. Letting the words fly out into the universe that need to fly out. Letting the words settle that need to settle. Thank you for listening and walking on this particular path of this particular Dharma talk. I appreciate you companioning me in it. Thank you, online Sangha.